Welcome back to Dweb Decoded, a podcast by Filecoin Foundation that explores the intersection of blockchain and the data economy. I'm your host, Aaron Stanley, and today we're talking about sizzling hot data storage on Filecoin with the team from Storacha. To tell us all about it, I'm joined by Chief Technology Officer Hannah Howard and Chief Product Officer Alex Kinstler. Hannah and Alex, it's great to have you both here.
Great to be here.
Thank you so much for hanging with us.
So to set the agenda here, we're going to start off talking about some context about Storacha and the role it looks to play in the Filecoin IPFS ecosystem. And then we'll talk about the user experience, some of the architecture, and some of the other features. But let's start off with some quick intros. Both of you are pretty familiar faces in the world of Filecoin, but it would be great if you could tell us a bit about your prior involvement in the ecosystem and then how you came to work on Storacha. Hannah, let's start with you.
Awesome. Well, at this point, I guess I would say I'm one of the IPS Filecoin oldies veterans because I've been working on it since 2018. I've worked on some early key IPFS protocols like BitSwap. Did a lot of work on the on Filecoin's markets protocols. Ultimately. More recently, wrote a Filecoin retrieval tool called Lassie, and in doing so, worked a lot with the Filecoin Saturn team and moved over there, and led Filecoin Saturn for a bit, but ultimately really got interested in hot storage as a missing layer between Filecoin and Saturn, which was trying to be a CDN. So ended up on essentially joining what was then Web3 storage and then became Storacha. And now here we are.
And Alex, how about you?
Well, I have a background in electronics and business, and I've been doing product management actually for more than a decade. So, and before doing Storacha, I was with Hannah at Protocol Labs. Same project, actually, Saturn recently. Just to introduce Saturn for a little bit, it's a decentralized content address CDN. It was actually back then at that time the largest decentralized CDN worldwide, with a capacity of 20 TBPS, which was about 10% of Cloudflare's capacity at that time, so quite impressive. And before doing that, I actually founded an industrial IoT and AI company for the manufacturing sector.
So, Alex, I'd like to start by talking about the big idea behind Storacha. Like, what are you guys looking to do? What are some of the pain points that you're trying to solve?
Sure. So Storacha is the brainchild, actually, of two projects that have merged. So these were Saturn, as we just mentioned, and Web3 storage. Saturn, the decentralized content address CDN, and Web3 storage, which was a fast storage layer for Filecoin. So our team's goal was always to provide storage that is easy to use, performant, and decentralized. Web3 storage was built with a developer-first approach to make using Filecoin as easy as possible. It had tremendous success due to its usability and quickly grew to over 50,000 users. However, it was also somewhat centralized. So we used centralized infrastructure for its hot storage to serve the files fast, and we backed it up on Filecoin. But this is where Storacha comes in. So Storacha was founded in July 2024 this year. Storacha is aiming at turning Web3 storage into a hot storage network that is part of Filecoin. Filecoin is great at rewarding storage providers for proof of replication, ensuring that a single individual copy provably exists over time. These copies are sealed and storage providers are rewarded for keeping those around. Storacha will be extending this incentive system to unsealed copies that were onboarded through Storacha, basically extending Filecoin with rewards for storing and serving data that can be retrieved fast. We're building a hot storage layer which does not need to compromise on usability, on performance, on reliability, and decentralization. And the best about Storacha is that it's backward compatible with Web3 storage. No migration will be required for the end users. That's Storacha in a nutshell.
Oh, very cool. So basically, you're providing an incentive mechanism for storage providers to be, storing hot copies of the data, not just cold storage, not just cold sealed storage. And then, so this is basically kind of the next evolution of Web3 storage. So users who are familiar with Web3 storage, this is kind of the same idea. There's just a few different improvements. kind of baked into the product here. So what's the story behind the Storacha name? You can see I'm sporting my Storacha T-shirt here for those of you watching on video, the flaming chicken. But I got to ask, like, what's the story behind the name? Like, how did you guys arrive on this? It's pretty clever.
I love that you're wearing the T-shirt. I should have worn it, but I have the Storacha in the background, so that's our Christmas Racha. So very proud presenting it. So the story behind the name, it's we started spinning off from Protocol Labs this year. We actually, we went pretty nerdy about it, and we had a structured naming process in place. So, where you capture like adjectives and emotions and, how you want to be perceived as a brand. But at the same time, we wanted to make it easy for people to understand what the project is about. So we engaged the whole kind of the whole suite of design company, naming specialists, and after a bunch of iterations, none of it was just making sense, and we're just not hitting the essence at the end of the day. At the same time, we actually were going through a naming exercise with the team, where the team was proposing a bunch of different names here and there. So we had shortlisted 3 names, and one of them was actually Storacha. So actually proposed by Hannah, who's on here today. And so initially we were like, well, it's just a crazy idea. And we're like a little bit hesitant, like, does it really represent storage? Because storage needs to like radiate professionalism, reliability, security, basically, a little bit of a boring, reliable Swiss bank, gray and sad. However, we wanted to be a little bit different. So we wanted to be radiant. We want to be inclusive, diverse, and refreshing. So we took a hot new take on storage, basically. And since we're building hot storage, which makes the name very fitting, like related to Storacha. And so we also thought, Filecoin is blue and Storacha is red. It just complements each other extremely well. And I think the last tipping point was, there is already Wasabi, and Wasabi is not ridiculous enough and has a lot of customers in the Web2 world. So Storacha is just the fitting name for us.
No, I hadn't even thought about that. There is the Wasabi, the competing Wasabi product. So maybe this is a broader trend of storage solutions naming themselves after very spicy foods, right? Anyway, well, nicely done. I love the name. I love the branding. It's really fun. Hannah, can you talk a bit about what hot data storage means in the context of Storacha, and then why this is so significant for users and developers?
For sure. Yeah. So hot data storage refers to a tier of storage where you can essentially put data, any arbitrary data into storage and get it back in the neighborhood of about 100 to 500 milliseconds for the time to get the first byte back. So this tier of storage is essentially the bread and butter of storage for developers. The most obvious interaction a user would have in a typical application that would use hot storage would be if they are uploading a file to a website. Let's say you're putting an image into an image gallery or an NFT collection. Almost always your application is going to use hot storage to store that file. The most well-known version of hot storage is that's centralized is Amazon S3 or Simple Storage Service. And hot storage is very flexible. You can put arbitrary amounts of data, though it's often small data, and you can store it for as long as you like. You usually pay monthly and then pay a fee to get it out. This is a different model than traditional deals on Filecoin. The way they operate on a fixed deal term. They have fixed sizes. And the retrieval story varies widely, but it's really well suited for the archival type of storage, which is I want to put a large amount of data into some sort of cold storage that I can get back later. So Storacha comes in and we can really enhance the capabilities of the Filecoin network with this hot storage, which is super useful for your average developer in both Web 2 and Web 3.
Right. So Filecoin right now, as it currently stands, if I'm hearing you correctly, is like really well suited for kind of that cold storage archival. Like I have this big data set. I want to make sure that this is secured for a year, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is. I want to make sure I know it's there. But if you're a developer and you're looking to be kind of accessing that data and retrieving that quickly, This is where like Storacha comes in to basically offer that service to where like, okay, you can upload that NFT file and you can access it basically on demand. It seems like with a service like this, you would really need to have, that like durability and like availability, to almost kind of match like what you could find with a Web 2 solution. How are you guys kind of thinking about this in terms of, providing that same type of experience for those users?
Absolutely. So just briefly, I want to explain what durability and availability mean. Basically, when I use storage, I want two things. I want to know you're not going to lose my data ever. And I want to know that the vast majority of times when I ask for my data, I get it back. So the first one is durability. That means you don't lose my data. And availability means when I ask for it, I get it back. Usually with a slightly lower guarantee than durability, because everyone understands there's occasional network outages. But generally, but I definitely don't want you to ever lose my data permanently. And I'd like to get it back, almost all the time. In comparable centralized hot storage, the guarantees are essentially they call it 11 nines on durability. That basically means in percentage, it's like 99.9 with an absurd number of nines after it percent. And then for availability, it's 3 nines or 99.9%. So we need to basically, to be competitive, we have to meet these goals because this is what people expect. I mean, it's the basic thing you're paying for, right? And so we have a number of mechanisms to meet that. I can go in deep on each component. The super TLDR, which is glossing over a lot of it, is that we address durability largely through Filecoin because Filecoin is really well suited to hitting that really strong durability guarantee. And then we get to the availability using a combination of proofs and incentives, as well as retrieval sampling on our hot storage providers to ensure they're meeting that guarantee.
So maybe let's talk a bit about each of these areas, and we can kind of talk a bit about the special sauce, if you will. To borrow a double entendre here of like kind of how you guys are providing this durability, this availability, a bit more on the technical front. I understand that you guys are looking to introduce a new type of proof, and just wondering, Hannah, if you could maybe walk, maybe without getting like super duper technical, but maybe talk us through a bit about the architecture of how you guys are thinking about this and how you've designed it.
Absolutely, yeah. So on the special sauce front, I want to actually talk about something I haven't mentioned before, which is critical to our platform, which isn't specifically related to durability and availability, because it's essentially a very new feature to add to hot storage. And that is, we use this technology called UCAN. Now, it's definitely super bleeding edge and new technology, but essentially, it's a complete re-architecture of the concept of authentication and authorization, essentially how we verify who we are on the internet and how we determine who's able to do what. The way that almost everything on the centralized internet works is that you authenticate yourself to your immediate centralized provider. And they are in control of deciding what you're authorized to do. And they are in control of deciding what you authorize other people to do on your behalf. And so you essentially, this is the moment where you lose control of your data. When you put it onto a centralized provider. And so UCAN is really interesting in the sense that your authentication is actually completely, like the way you prove you are who you say you are, it's completely not part of the site you're interfacing with. It's built into your identifier. It's called a decentralized identifier. And then the authorization, everything you do in Storacha is tracked and derived from what you've already authorized. That means that we have built a system, and this is like an immediate product feature, where you can disassemble an audit trail of everything that happened to your data once it went into the system, including all the way to the point where it got on into a Filecoin archive, Filecoin storage deal. And we even expose this technology for UCAN. So UCAN is something that we're deeply invested in. Decentralized identifier is also a technology we're used in and is heavily used, for example, like in Blue Sky. The social network is built with decentralized identifiers. They're exploring UCAN. They haven't got as far into it as we have. But these are these really awesome technologies for essentially inverting the control of authority in the internet, which to me is sort of like secret heart of our mission is that, we really want, we don't want this world where we just hand data over to these giant companies and they do what they will with it. So that's a deep dive in our special sauce, a little bit of a sidebar because it's a little closer to the front of our system. But in terms of how we specifically deal with solve these core storage problems in a decentralized world. Happy to briefly touch on that. As I said, for durability, Filecoin has a unique and very complicated and very hard to implement, but very well implemented storage proof that essentially is perfect for guaranteeing durability, and that's what the chain runs on. So we're gonna use that for the availability. We're introducing in partnership and actually having through collaboration with some of the other teams in the Filecoin ecosystem, including Philoz and Curio, which are two core development teams for the protocol, where they are helping us to introduce a new storage proof to the protocol. And this proof it's called proof of data possession. Concretely, what it means is it proves that that the storage provider has the data ready to serve at any given time. So that's important because it basically means when I ask for my retrieval, it's ready to be served in a reasonable amount of time so that I can meet my hot storage guarantees. We also have incentives for retrieval, which is critical because fundamentally that's the other reason that people don't serve data quickly is if they have no incentive to do so. It costs money to send it over the internet. And then lastly, we're going to be doing various forms of sampling and testing to ensure people are meeting our quality of service. So that's kind of the strategy for across the board for durability and availability. I'm happy to go into any other areas. I know I just covered a lot of stuff.
Very cool. No, that's a great overview. I think probably for the purpose of this podcast, that's probably a good enough. But we'd love to go maybe a bit deeper on a future episode, exploring some of these. But some super interesting concepts in there that, especially the UCAN idea. It's a pretty interesting concept. So congratulations on getting that kind of over the finish line. Maybe let's take a moment here and talk a bit about just how what you guys are building at Storacha fits into the broader Filecoin roadmap and ecosystem. And maybe we can kind of touch on some of these questions like product market fit, which there's been a lot of conversation around this in the ecosystem lately. Maybe Hannah, we can even start with you here. And then Alex, if you want to chime in kind of from the product side as well, that would be really interesting. But I'd love to get both of your takes on what's the, if I'm if I'm an observer of this ecosystem, I'm seeing that there's a lot of these different, there's your Akaves and your Basins and some of these other networks popping up that are offering various kind of bespoke or more, each of these are offering similar services, but a little different flavor. But how does Storacha sort of fit into this landscape here?
For sure. So I think for the broader Filecoin ecosystem, you mentioned that product market fit is really important. And just for context, when Filecoin was launched, it was launched with an incentive to build capacity, right? Which was that was the first step, was to assemble a lot of storage. And then the second step was to make it, used by actual people. And that up till now was largely done through another incentive program called Filecoin Plus. But we're now getting to the point where it's we just need to offer a competitive storage tier and have it incentivized by people, paying for it like they normally do. And so you have what you have in Filecoin right now is in order for that to be a plausible story, you need to have offerings across the landscape of storage, right? People are not going to go with a single network, with a network like Filecoin just to do archival and nothing else. You need to have hot storage. You need to eventually maybe have CDN. You probably have additional services around, that are important, like, various forms of services that will check behavior, repair data. Like, you want to build a storage ecosystem. That's what makes it compelling from a product market fit perspective. Now, where Storacha comes in within that is, as we said, we're in the hot storage tier. We are also specifically, I think, really oriented towards your average, any developer in Web3, potentially Web2 as well, where it's just like, I just want to use something right away. And I want to get easy tools that I know that are well documented, simple to use, compatible in almost all environments, which most of our software libraries are. And I just want to be able to self-sign up and start working. And that's where we're really well targeted. We really want to be like, particularly in Web3, if I'm writing a decentralized app, I'm doing stuff on, blockchain, we would like eventually for you to just be able to store Storacha right from the blockchain. And that's something we're working towards. So that's kind of where we fit in it. Alex maybe can talk a little bit more just like on exactly how Storacha, our sort of our own product market fit vision for Storacha.
Yeah, Alex, would love your take on that question. And then I also want to turn the conversation a bit more to the kind of the user experience side. Like, I know you guys are putting a lot of effort into like just making this solution like really usable for people. Maybe people who have thought about using decentralized storage solutions in a Web3 context before, but maybe for whatever reason that it was too difficult for them, or it wasn't a smooth enough experience for them. So would love to kind of get your thoughts on those questions.
Sure, for sure. So Storacha, first of all, is a self-service platform. So the first touch point would be for the user to go to our website, storacha.network, and then click on Start Storing. So this will take you to our storage UI, and so you'll be able to create an account with an email and a credit card. So the way that you're actually used to do that. We abstracted the difficult parts of decentralization completely away. So in the background, we actually tie your email address to your decentralized authorization keys, basically just reducing it to a magic link. So for the end user, it just feels like magically seamless somehow. And so to experiment after you've created your account, you can just upload data via our UI. So it's useful for people without a technical background. But for the developers who we are actually targeting first, they will be able to upload data using one of our tools like the CLI or the JS client. We're also currently working on the Go client as well. And for everyone else who uses a different programming language, they can use our API. And the best way for devs actually to get started is to go to our technical documentation at docs.storacha.network and try our command line learning tool called Learn UW3 App.
Very cool. And then talk a bit about like what types of clients, use cases, like user profiles are you really looking at, or are you targeting for this, especially in the early stages? I understand you guys are really more focusing on kind of the Web3 native crowd. So maybe talk a bit about that, like who you're targeting specifically there. And then, as this rolls out, I mean, you guys just launched a few months ago, obviously. So once we kind of get the Web3 developers in, like, how do you intend to maybe target maybe folks who are a bit more on the Web2 bent?
Sure. So we have two distinct profiles. One is the individual developer who wants to build something very useful quickly, who needs to use decentralized storage that is very easy. So these are the retail customers, and we want to be a developer platform first, a developer network first. The second one is Web3 businesses who have large data needs but want to use decentralized storage technologies that are performant enough and sufficiently decentralized. So typically these Web3 businesses that we're targeting are in the gaming area, the deep-in area, AI, or also blockchain infrastructure space. And to dive a little bit deeper actually on the type of use cases that we're supporting, so we are actually hosting currently the data for some of the largest NFT marketplaces in the world. But we also closed like big partnerships in the gaming space very recently with 3S Game Studio, to mention a few. They're launching a blockbuster game actually this year, and they use Storacha for storing game binaries for game installations. We also closed a partnership with Yom.ooo, which is a gaming deepen network for server-side rendering. So Storacha helps there with game distribution. And if we look beyond these markets, Storacha also supports deepen use cases which need data sovereignty for the data being collected by individual providers of a deepen network. So this data sovereignty that we enable through the UCANs that Hannah just described ensures that the data owner can have full control over the data, and they're able to share and monetize on it via decentralized permissioning using our technologies. Sorry, I just have to redo this. I just hit my mic. All right. So Storacha also supports deepen use cases, which need data sovereignty for data being collected by individual providers on the deepen network. This data sovereignty ensures that the data owner can have full control over the data and is able to share and monetize it via decentralized permissioning with the technologies like UCANs that Storacha offers. Our community also started building Python clients on Storacha to support upcoming agent use cases. And for whoever listened into our hot takes on the Twitter Spaces yesterday, we talked to the Gaia network, who are the leaders in the decentralized agent space. And the future is where autonomous decentralized agents collaborate together, and one agent can autonomously share, for example, data access via delegation to the next agent. Is something that Storacha is working on. We want to offer this in a performant and scalable way. And so to answer your question, how do we get now from Web3 to Web2? I think there are like a lot of very interesting Web3 use cases here. And the more we cover these use cases, we also get to feature completeness. And the more we become also appealing to, let's say, traditional companies. So I believe that Storacha doesn't need to go out into Web 2. I think that Web 2 will start going into Web 3, and these borders will just like merge more or less.
That's interesting. Yeah. So people in the Web 2 world will just see what's happening organically here, and they'll be like, okay, this is there's a solution here that people are using, and we should definitely consider using it as well, right? There's something we should be researching here, or at least examining. What's your Alex? What's your pitch to like Web3 builders who may have experimented with decentralized storage solutions in the past, or they may have thought about it, but maybe it just wasn't really like a priority? Like they're focused on, it just wasn't like an immediate priority for the data angle to be like decentralized, right? They're like, oh, maybe eventually we'll use AWS for now. Eventually we'll kind of figure out the storage component, but it's just maybe it's too complicated, or it's just not a priority, or whatever it might be. But like, what's your pitch to these folks who, for whatever reason, like it's just not a priority for them at the moment? Like, why is this something that they need to be like really concerned about in this coming year?
So Storacha makes building applications with decentralized storage simple. It is backward compatible with Web3 storage and is battle tested and production ready. We have been storing petabytes of data and serving petabytes of data every month for a long time already. So not only is Storacha reliable and super scalable, but it also enables data sovereignty with UCANs in a performant way that is verifiable. It outperforms any on-chain permissioning system by a mile. So you can start using storage in new ways and new architectures where your end users directly upload to storage providers without going through your servers and saving you costs, but all this with very little complexity. That's my pitch.
Got it. Okay. Very cool. To round out here, I'd just like to talk a bit about the 2025 roadmap, like what you all have in store. I know you just launched officially in July of this past year, and we're 6 months into this adventure, but would love to hear what you guys are prioritizing, what you're excited about for 2025, whether it be on the product roadmap or on the BD roadmap. Maybe Hannah, you want to go first, and then Alex, feel free to chime in if you have anything to add.
For sure. Yeah. So we actually just launched at DevCon and announced it at Phil Bangkok, the alpha version of the decentralized storage network, which rolls out a bunch of our foundational decentralization technologies. So when we look at 2025, we're looking at going from that to a production, to really getting that to production and further decentralizing the way that our network works. We would very much like for eventually not just for our storage to be decentralized, but for the coordination of our network to run on a blockchain, as opposed to, like currently we still have nodes that are making decisions that we run. We would like that to be in a public, trustable place. We also want to decentralize right now for the immediate retrieval to end users. In order, we're still when we need to accelerate it at the CDN layer, at the CDN level, we are still using a centralized CDN. We would very much like that to eventually be as well decentralized, and to actually get back into that decentralized CDN product that we had with Filecoin Saturn. So all those things are things we're pursuing in 2025. Hopefully we'll get towards the end of it. We're also pursuing, that's our path to decentralization. We're also at the same time building out the product to be really feature complete with what people expect from traditional centralized hot object storage. That includes things like private data and mutability, a bunch of other those types of features. And Alex can maybe talk a little bit more about our goals as it relates to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, we have been growing tremendously so far this year, and we actually want to accelerate this further next year. We've got actually a couple of very exciting projects in the pipeline. So from launching our referral program to a loyalty program, and like a few sneak peeks on a Telegram and Blue Sky app that will be powered by Storacha coming up in the next year. And then secondly, also we will be looking at large partnerships that we will be closing next year and work with some large players in our ecosystem. So just teasing that out for now. And also importantly, we will be looking also in the first half next year, after having raised a very successful seed round this year, to bring in some more strategic investors on board to help us fuel that growth.
Very cool. Well, Hannah and Alex, I really appreciate you coming on the show to talk about Storacha and what you guys have been building. Congratulations on all your success so far. It's a pretty exciting product. I'm sure it's been a long journey for both of you to get here, but must be pretty rewarding. Would love to just turn it back to you both for any final thoughts, and then how can folks find you if they want to get in touch or if they want to learn more? Maybe Alex, start with you and kick over to Hannah.
Sure. Thank you so much for having us. So you can find us on storacha.network. And then secondly, I think the easiest way to reach us is either on Blue Sky with Storacha Network handle or on X. We're also running the hot takes every Wednesday or Thursday, where we interview founders of Web3 projects and go behind the scenes, learn about the founders. So that's somewhere where you could tune in and listen to us as well. And yeah, lastly, I'm very excited to make storage easy and sexy again.
Yeah, it's really, we're trying to be a little bit of a different kind of Web3 company, where it's just like, come on board, join our Discord, be part of the solution. And, and we want like these original goals that we all started with in Web3 around decentralizing the internet in a way that puts power back in the hands of users. We want to get there, and we're excited, and we're not happy with ourselves until we have. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, Hannah and Alex, really appreciate your time here today. And congratulations again on what you've achieved so far, and keep up the good work. And best of luck in the new year. And thanks to everyone for watching today on Dweb Decoded. We'll be back again soon with another great episode.